The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the Profile and Clean User Share Files webinar. This webinar will be presented by Jim McGann and Greg Jorgensen. Jim is the Vice President of Marketing at Index Engines. He has extensive experience with e-discovery and information management in the Fortune 2000 sector. He's a frequent writer and speaker on topics such as big data, backup tape remediation, electronic e-discovery, and records management. Greg is a solutions architect at Index Engines and with extensive experience in e-discovery. Please type any questions for Jim or Greg in the question area on the right of your screen, and they will answer them at the end of the webinar. So let's begin. Jim?
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, everybody, for your time today. We expect to go about 45 minutes. I'll go through a series of slides to explain the solution and the challenges that we have today around managing user shares. And then Greg's going to go into a demonstration of the technology. For those of you that are not familiar with Index Engines, we are an enterprise software company, have been in the business since 2004. We focus on providing information management and archiving solutions. Some of the unique value we provide is the ability to efficiently provide a level of intelligence across all classes of enterprise storage, including legacy backup tapes, to be able to find, profile, manage those assets, supporting information governance, supporting archiving solutions, and a lot of clients are using the technology for the disposition of content, including defensively deleting data and managing it based on corporate policies. Some of the challenges that you face every day in your data center, beyond just user shares, is that it's complex. I mean, even we have clients that have multi-petabyte user shares, so it gets significantly large in terms of the volume of data that exists. And there's obviously data that can be locked in proprietary repositories. Typically on a user share, you're not going to find email servers and content such as that, but you may find user PSTs and files like that. But there's a lot of proprietary content that's on there and data types and so on. Corporations have typically saved everything. Our clients are struggling really with information overload. They've been data hoarders for a long time, and IT has really just been instructed to increase capacity to make sure data is available as required. So in addition to increasing capacity, IT organizations have been copying it and preserving it in archives and really not cleaning up content. It's not purged. I mean, no one's really gotten rid of anything over decades of electronic content. Users have a lot of power. Users take copies and copies of files in remote servers. We've done data profiles on client servers and found, anywhere from iTunes libraries and videos, bootleg videos, to hundreds of copies of large, large slide decks and so on. So, users save copies of content, whether it has value or no value, on these servers, and and replicate it over and over again. So, I mean, really, the challenge that we see is really that there's just a general lack of knowledge of content and what exists. And what we're seeing within IT organizations is definitely a trend for the IT organizations to just have better knowledge, high-level knowledge of what exists. Not that file contains the latest Jones contract, but where is Sue Smith data? What stuff hasn't been accessed in the past 7 years? How many copies of these files exist? So lack of knowledge and lack of that insight makes it very difficult to manage content like user shares. There's really no master directory. Some statistics. It wouldn't be a slide presentation without statistics. Our friends at Gartner Group always, it's their job really to generate industry statistics, but they're saying that data growth right now is running at anywhere from 40 to 60% annually. We've talked to customers that have 100% data growth, so they're doubling their storage year after year. More typically, it's around 50% or so. Another stat from Gartner as well, showing that through this year, 95% of information management programs will really be focused on reducing IT costs. So no one's going to argue the fact that most all the IT budgets have been in a downward trend over the past few years, especially this year. But while that's happening, they're saying that 95% of organizations are focused on managing information risk. So, when your organization's coming to you and say, you need to clean up and manage risk associated with these user shares or corporate servers, and we're going to cut your IT budget. What happens when that server gets full and you need to upgrade storage capacity, and how do you execute those tasks? One of the more enlightening stats, and this is not, this is for specific types of companies. It may not be obviously a fit for your organization, but this CGOC, this Compliance, Governance, and Oversight Council, did a survey found that 69% of information in most companies has no business or legal or regulatory value. So it's not to say that you're going to go out and take upwards of 70% of your data and just delete it automatically, but it's giving you kind of that statistic that shocks you into the thought of, what value does our data have? And as data ages throughout, its life cycle, the older it gets, the less value it has. And how can that stuff be managed accordingly? And managing it may be deleting it. It may be moving it to cloud storage. It may just be taking it offline. So there's a couple different strategies there. But most organizations don't even know what data has value and what data has no value. So data profiling is a new concept that's gaining significant steam. And it's really the concept of really creating a profile of your user data. So it's really about unstructured user file data. User shares is what we're talking about today. That's usually kind of the data junk drawer that people are dealing with, and it could be in tens of terabytes, hundreds of terabytes. We've seen petabyte user shares that exist out there. So the first step in data profiling is to scan the source. So if you've got large volumes of data, the first scan it has to go through touch everything to access the content and understand what the metadata criteria is. What we've done is incorporated very high-speed indexing technology. It's our own homegrown indexing technology that was architected for enterprise-class environments that talk in petabytes. So it's the fastest indexing platform in the market. It'll index and provide incremental updates to that index as the data changes. And what happens is generates a very rich metadata search repository that can be searched of content. So it can index user shares as a common source of pain. What we're talking about today is those user junk drawers that are out there that store all sorts of content. Email servers, departmental servers, even backup tapes. I mentioned earlier that one of our claim to fame here at Index Engine is that we have the ability to scan backup tapes without having the original backup software to index the content of those. So data profiling can occur on your online data that's on your networks, as well as offline content and things like backup tapes. So by scanning those sources, what happens is a very rich metadata database is created of all the unstructured user data. So some of the important fields are things like dates. So one of the things that you would want to know is if you're pointing to a 100 terabyte server is, what percent of stuff hasn't been modified in more than 5 years? So it's stuff that's really abandoned, data that's been abandoned or is rotting and has no value. Or access date or created date. Users, who owns that stuff? So you could say, point to a server and say 40% of the stuff has been accessed in 5 years. And of that stuff that has been accessed in 5 years, who owns it? You know what? Another, 50% of the stuff is owned by ex-employees. So no one's accessing it, it's owned by ex-employees. What are the chances of that sitting there and continuing to rot on your network? Pretty high. If it's 40% of that content, that's a significant volume of data. And I think that's insight that data profiling that can provide, and Greg's going to show you that in the demo, that allows you to make decisions. So you can go to the different departments, team leads, and so on, and say, do you know, within your department, you're storing stuff that hasn't been accessed in this long. If it's a research and development department, that may be interesting for them. It's like, is that stuff that we can leverage for research purposes? If it's just your mailroom or your communications department, it's like, there's no business value in that. That could easily be purged out. Also metadata, you can look at things like location, backup information, and so on. So the core of data profiling is really this rich metadata index. And what you can do with that is you can combine, this is really the power of the Index Engine's data profiling platform, is the ability to apply queries and filters along with summary reports. So you can do things like, I want to point to that specific server. Who owns the data? Okay, John Doe owns, 20% of that data. Let's filter down and just look at John Doe. Okay, what type of data is that? What's the age of the data? so on. So you can use a combination of filtering to filter down to a specific subset of data and summary reports to just get results out of that, and to kind of iterate through that in order to make decisions about the data. And decisions about the data may just be the report, so that you can have conversations about it, or maybe disposition decisions about keep, no keep, archive, keep an eye on. So a lot of these solutions, especially archiving solutions, require you to move data into the archive to be managed. We can manage data in place, so just leave it on that user share, leave it on the network, and monitor it. So as it ages out to maybe 3 years and hasn't been touched in 3 years, you can move it to less expensive storage or offline or so on. So, managing data in place is definitely one of those disposition criteria as well. So, as I mentioned, managing data in place is very important. I think one of our key strategies is let's avoid moving data. Moving data is expensive and time-consuming. So let's, keep it where it is if it makes sense, and keep an eye on it. So that's what data profiling allows you to do. That is to manage based on those policies. And that's most of the stuff really that you're going to be monitoring is the stuff with short-term business value. It's the stuff that the contract your CFO worked on last week. Okay, that really shouldn't be moved. It should remain in place, and it has significant value because it's being was created by one of your executives. It was created recently. So that's that can be determined by some of the metadata criteria. Some of the other criteria could tell you stuff that has intellectual property or content with long-term business value. It could be documents that were a part of the manufacturing documents for Project X, and you want to archive those and make sure they're in a safe and secure spot. So archiving is one of the disposition decisions we see to really support legal compliance, even e-discovery type activities. And remediate is becoming more and more common. I think most people on this event today really haven't had any remediation strategies. Most data has just been kept on networks, just allows to just sit there and rot away. Whereas, if you can look at some of that metadata and say, let's look at all the stuff that's owned by ex-employees. Stuff that's owned by ex-employees that hasn't been accessed in 5 years. And it's duplicate content that what exists in the network already. If we classify it that way, could that be remediated, defensively and legally within your, corporate regulatory environment, and recoup significant portion of content that exists on that network? So data disposition is really an ultimate end goal, but what data profiling provides is the knowledge. And you may just want to take that knowledge and go out to your business units and start having these conversations, but most of the business unit folks are going to need to make these decisions about remediating or archiving based on their policies and so on. So this is our product, actually. It comes as a appliance, as you can see here on the bottom. It's a 2U rack-mounted appliance. It is the highest speed indexing platform on the market today, which is definitely the #1 requirement for data profiling. Is you need to have indexing that runs at incredibly high speeds and runs in the background. So it becomes part of the infrastructure, has low impact on your environment, and provides incremental updates, fresh updates of the index itself. No one is faster at doing that on the market today. Access to all sources. So, for a lot of our clients, they're wanting to do some data profiling on their legacy data. So we have clients that have tens of thousands of tapes sitting in off-site storage vaults like Iron Mountain or Recall, where it's, costing them money to store that content. So data profiling can be performed on not only your online sources like your user shares, but also your legacy content on legacy backup tapes. And by doing data profiling, we're typically finding that less than 1% of the tape content has value that needs to be extracted from tape. And part of our secret sauce here is that we have the ability to extract and cherry pick individual emails and files from tape without using the original backup software. So it becomes a very cost-effective process to process those tapes, get what you need, and remediate the rest. And then finally, part of our design criteria is to make this a very cost-effective, enterprise-ready platform that proves out immediately the return on investment. So, for data profiling, I'll talk about some of the pricing at the end. But, when we plug this into clients' environments, we just finished a client project last week where they plugged it in and immediately, within the first 10 minutes, saw that a large portion of the data they were storing on the user share was owned by an ex-employee and had no value. And that's something they saw and were able to make a decision on within minutes of using the product. Some more technical specs on the platform. It's a 2U Linux-based server. It's got 8 terabytes of storage. A single one of these engines today, to show you the level of efficiency of the platform, single engine can support 1 petabyte of metadata data profiling. It's got 72 gig of memory, fiber SCSI or network connection on the back end. Again, high-speed indexing, does NFS or SIFS crawling. So in order to index the data, it needs to see it. So NFS or SIFS is one method of crawling. We can also leverage NDMP if your server is NDMP enabled to act as an NDMP controller, and you can dump data to the index engine, the profile engine via NDMP, which is very high speed. A really important point here and a huge differentiator for this solution is the ability to integrate to Active Directory and LDAP. So what we do is understand all the security scheme of the documents and so on. We can look at the groups that exist within there. So, within Active Directory, you may have your HR or your financial group or your legal group defined within your Active Directory groups. We can inherit that information and understand those groups as well in order to kind of allow you to segment some of the reports by those departments as well. So Active Directory integration has become really critical for our clients. So in terms of the metadata output, so what we extract from the files, again, we're not making copies of files or any of the content. What we're doing is just extracting this rich metadata. So we extract things like user file information like dates, email. We can index email as well. So most of the clients are using this mostly for a file, unstructured files. However, email may be processed and profiled additionally. So you can do things in terms of data profiling and say, and one of the more common use cases, which I think Greg will show you today as well, is tell me what data hasn't been accessed in more than 7 years. So if you kind of classify a bunch of that data as aged data or data that's been abandoned or is rotted away, can you have a conversation with your team and your counterparts within the legal or the records management folks about that content? Like, do we really need to keep this stuff? And if we do need to keep it, what stuff has value versus what doesn't have value? Maybe I could classify it a little bit further and take it to another level and take this content that has been accessed in 7 years and tell you that 20% of it has value, the rest doesn't. Another type of query would be what data is owned by ex-employees. Something like where is John Doe's email? So when you're kind of looking for stuff to support legal, you can easily use this technology to be able to uncover that content. A lot of people are, struggling with tight backup windows. If you're, working with your backup teams, like why are you backing up data that is more than 10 years old? Stuff that can be archived off the network and kind of reduce your backup windows. What percentage of data is duplicate? One of the values of indexing technology here is that as you index data, even at a metadata level, it uses an MD5 hash algorithm to create a unique document signature so you can find a duplicate. So you can point to a 10 terabyte server and say, you know what, 35% of the content on here is duplicates. Now we've seen anywhere from 30% up to 60% of content that could be redundant on these servers. So in addition to the metadata, there's a number of queries that are available, which you'll see in the demo. So you can do full content query, which is an optional capability, and you need full content to do stuff like full text search. So if you want to find documents that contain the keyword confidential, you'll need full text. Or if you're doing a PII audit, so for person identifiable information like Social Security number, credit card numbers, you can look for that content as well, but you need a full text. So here's, performing a PII audit, a lot of clients are under some regulatory requirements to make sure that sensitive data like that customer records containing Social Security numbers and credit card numbers is secure. Where are PSTs, email containers that exist out there, what data is on a user assurance service. You can take locations and take it down to specific servers or even specific subdirectories within that server. What backup tapes contain email. So there's a lot of more detailed queries and filters that can be used. So this is a good chart that kind of shows you typical reports and analysis that our clients go through, and it really depends on your business which would be more important to you. One of the more common ones is the age data. So, here you can filter and query and say, point to a specific user share and show me what hasn't been accessed in 5 years. So a lot of clients are moving that to cheaper storage. Could be a cloud environment, could be just lower cost storage. Other areas people are saying, show me all the ex-employee data. You can do a query by owner names or leverage Active Directory by looking at inactive accounts and say, find me ex-employee data that hasn't been accessed in more than 7 years. Can we safely delete that stuff? And a lot of your regulatory legal teams can agree with that, saying that we have no legal hold obligations beyond 7 years, and if it's owned by ex-employees, it's basically abandoned data. Looking at departmental data, like a research and development server, looking for specific project keywords and archive that stuff for safekeeping, archive it offline. A lot of clients are finding a lot of large multimedia files. Those users that exist in your network that have archived all the Star Wars movies, on the network, which could be copyright infringement, but mainly it's taking up a lot of space. So searching for multimedia files like video and audio files, who owns them, how much space is it taking up, find your top 50 culprits, and notify their management that they're storing a lot of multimedia stuff on here. PIO audit I mentioned, managing PST. So you can see kind of the flexibility in just different types of reports and different disposition decisions that could be made of that content. So here's some screenshots. You'll see a little bit more detail in a minute about the workflow. So you can go in here and, like I said, filter on specific locations. So these are just different servers. They could be user shares. They could be specific locations within user shares. So pick and choose really what you want to do. And you get this chart. It's a simple visual chart that you'll see that shows modified times by file count. So here you see a large chunk here in red hasn't been modified in more than 5 years. You can analyze the capacity here. This is nothing so big here, about 57 gig in this demo environment. Could be 57 terabytes in your environment. So if it's 57 terabytes, say that 42% of what's on these specific locations here that I checked hasn't been accessed. 57 terabytes, for example, hasn't been accessed in more than 5 years. So what you can do now is you can filter down, and just, these reports are pretty cool because they're active reports. So I can say, uncheck everything except for my greater than 5 years. And then I can run another report and say, who owns this stuff? And you can see here that a large portion of it is our David Wright here owns about 63% of it. In this case, it's 20 gigabytes. Let's turn that into 20 terabytes. So that's 20 terabytes of data owned by David Wright. And you know what? We happen to know that David Wright's an ex-employee. So it's sitting there, and it's data that hasn't been accessed in years, owned by an ex-employee, taking up 20 terabytes of storage. Let's talk about that and take the next steps on it. So some of the next steps is, we have within the interface, which Greg will show you, we have a delete key, which will delete that content. We also have output, too. So you can get this output is a CSV text file output, which will give you things like the path, where the specific files are located in the file name, in this case, modification date. So you can use this, and a lot of customers actually, instead of using the delete key, will feed this output into other tools that use to do things like purge the data, move the data, copy it, even encrypt. So if you're doing some queries and finding sensitive content that needs to be encrypted, you can use tools to do that. So that said, I'm going to move it over to Greg, and Greg's going to take you through a demonstration of the technology. And if you do have any questions, you can type them in there. We'll try to take them through the session, or if we don't have time, we'll take them at the end. So let me switch this over to Greg.
Thanks, Jim. So what I'm going to do first, like Jim said, is show you a little bit of an overview of the search and reporting interface. And then I'm going to go into a few of the user case scenarios, such as showing you those sample summary reports and how those work in conjunction with our metadata search abilities for finding files by extension, like looking for PST files, finding audio-video files, looking at age reports, running a PII search, and then looking at some of our deduplication reports. So the first thing is on the left side of the screen here, you'll see our search filters. There's a couple different ways to search and narrow your data profiling reports. The first is by using some of our metadata level filters here. Another option is once you learn our query code, using some of the queries here, you can get really some pretty complicated searches built up that you could save for future running of those, so you don't have to build them each time. We have a save queries option. And then the third option is by location. So going through some of the filters options here, again, doing a data profile, you'll have that metadata-rich index. You could search on any of the file-level properties. So these are items such as the file name, the owner, the custodian of those files, the signature, which is the MD5 hash that we create and use for deduplication reasons. You could search files by a specific size, date created, date modified. And then there's a whole different categorized options here. So if I wanted to go by extension and look for, let's say, email messages, there's a whole category here with those email extensions. If I come down more, I want to look at, let's say, mailboxes, same thing. All these different categories that you could select the entire category or just a single item within the category, such as, let's say, Lotus Notes database. In addition to the file level metadata, we have document level properties as well to search by. This is properties within like Office files, for example. Here, same thing. You can search by title of the Word document or the PowerPoint. Let's say user, the author here, the author that created that document. Same thing with the date fields, the created and modify fields. And then for email messages, you can look at properties of an email message, such as like the sent date, your to, your from, your BCC, and also going down even to the class information here if you want to just limit your search to, let's say, meeting requests. So those are all the filter abilities in the tool. So I'm going to go down now to locations. This is another popular way to search and limit your data profiling set of reports, is going by location. So once you go do an NSF, SIS, or NDMP crawl job and all the data is indexed in an index segment on the index engine's appliance, it'll maintain all of the locations and subdirectories and paths of those file shares that you index or those email servers. So you could, on a top level, I could select a group of servers to index within, or I can go and navigate down within a certain filer and limit it to a specific subdirectory or subfolder within there. So those are different ways to narrow your searches down. I'm going to clear that out. For demo purposes, I have a sample set of demo data that I have tagged here. I'm going to go and tag that subset of data and run my search on that specific subset. So I'm going to click on the search button. I'm on our reports tab here, and this is where you're going to see some of those summary reports that Jim showed you on the slides. So I just ran a blank search basically on this subset of data profiling demo data. As you see here, I have our interactive summary report here on the right, which gives a nice visual of the major files by types in this scenario. You can further cull in this report by clicking on individual pieces of this pie chart, or by going and deselecting and selecting just the file types you care about from within the report here. Other types of reports, in addition to file types, are available on this drop-down here. So I'm going to go through a couple of the major ones that we use all the time. One is, in addition to types, you can look by extension. It's going to show you the types here by extension. Again, these are all interactive and further cullable from right within the report. Going down to look at the owners. So the owners of this data, I can go see here the owner name, the display name, number of files by owner, and the size. There's also a size report. So I can go see the size of the data here. So again, this is the size that I narrowed down to my data set, which is a particular file share I use for demo reasons. So this could be a size of multiple servers or a subdirectory within whatever server you're data profiling. Another one that Jim talked about that's very important for data profiling is your modify time. So looking at that age report, I can see here a majority of this data is greater than 5 years. There's 43,000 files, around 25 gigs in this demo server. And again, this is all cullable from within the report. So I can go and deselect here and just say, I want to look at for data greater than 4 years. And go update my report. It's going to then present me with another a batch of summary reports. So I'm looking at data just 4 years or greater. Who owns that data? I can go and now see the owners of that data. I can go see the host where that data resides, on what host. Here there's like 3 different hosts. Predominantly the data is on a majority of 2 of the 3. I can go see what type of files those are. So what type of files were greater than 4 years? So those are different ways to work within the reports, combining the reports with searching on the metadata values. So again, I'm going to clear my search out here. I'm going to go and again limit my search to my data profiling demo set of data. I'm going to run that search, and I'm going to look for PST files. This is a common use case that we see with data profiling customers. They may have a policy that prohibits users from putting PSTs out in the environment. So I'm looking here at my file extensions. I'm going to look to see if there's any PST files out here. Don't see any on this list right here. Actually, I do. There's 36 of them. You know, that's outside the policy for this example. So I want to look further into those. So here there's PST, there's 15 gigs, 36 files. I want to know more about that because that shouldn't have been there. That's outside the, let's say, this client's policy on data management. So I'm going to update my search, limiting it to PSTs. First thing I want to know is who owns this PST data. What are the owners for that data? So I see here there's 4 different owners. Where's that data housed on my enterprise? Let me see what host. Okay, there's a few hosts that data is sitting on. Let's see age report. Let's see when those PSTs were last modified. I'm going here. There's quite a bit. I'd say about 50% of that is probably abandoned data. There's some files here, so let's look further into that. Let's look at anything that's not been modified in 3 years or greater. I can go back here, update my search report. Now I'm just seeing those files, those PSTs that I'm presuming were abandoned since they haven't been modified in 3 years or greater. And I could even get further information on this by going from our Reports tab over to our Results tab. So once I go to our Results tab, it'll list out here the file names of those PSTs. Let's say I clicked on one of them. I want to learn more about this particular file. I can just scroll up on my screen here. It's going to show me all of the metadata attributes that were available for this particular PST file. You can see the size of the file. I can see the path of where that file came from. You can see the owner of that file, the date last modified, host name. Scrolling down here again is the whole path. So I could take these files, let's say I want to take all these PST files that shouldn't be on this network. It's against our policy, let's say, and it's I'm presuming it's abandoned data since it's greater than 3 years. I want to present this report to one of my colleagues internally. I could download a CSV report. And when I go and I click on download, it's going to ask me if I want to download this Excel file. I click on open. What this is going to give me is a CSV report of all of those 10 files. It's going to give me one row for each file, and it's going to show me all of that metadata that's available for each of these items out there. So all these PST files. So here I'm looking at by file path. It's going to show me the path of where all those PSTs are located, file name, the owner, the modified date. So I have an audit trail report here. Let's say my policy, we're outside policy and we want to defensively delete these. Here's my audit report of why I deleted these. They're outside our retention policy, let's say for PSTs, maybe is a year. These are all greater than 3 years. Right here is my audit trail and my reporting on why these were defensively deleted for this use case scenario. And I'm going to go back into the GUI here. Right from the GUI, like Jim said, we have a delete button. So let's say I found a PST that's out there that I want to delete from the enterprise. I can go and select it, come up here and click delete key, and this interface is going to present me with a few options. One option is to delete it from my index engine's index segment. One is to delete it from my primary storage, so from the source of where it resides in the network. And then we have a third option that we're currently adding that's coming out in our next release to delete from both, so you don't have to run these jobs twice. You can delete from both your index engine segment as well as your source. And there's an option here to check the modification time or signature before deleting. So let's say I ran my last incremental update on my index about 2 weeks ago. I want to verify that even though I ran my report, my index shows that all these PSTs were not modified in less than 3 years. It's a validation here that I can run to make sure within the time I last ran my incremental update on my index to make sure the user hasn't gone and modified those in any way. I'm going to close out of there. I'm going to go back, clear my screen out. I'm going to show you a couple more use case scenarios so you can see the interaction between reporting and our metadata searches. So again, limiting my data to this demo set of data. I'm going to go, this time I want to look for audio files. So I'm going to go over to our File Properties screen. I'm going to scroll down here. I want to look for by extension. And I want to search all audio file extensions. So I'm going to select the parent level here of that. The same thing for video files. Go select all my video extensions. So now I'm searching a set of data that I located. It's a one file share. And I'm looking for audio and video files on that file share. I'm going to run my search. I can see here that there definitely are results. I see here that there are 4 results that return on this particular file share. I can go to the extension report. See I have some AVI, SWF, and MP3 files. Again, I can go see who owns that data. One owner. So now I have some information. I can go back here to my results screen. I can see the file path and the metadata level information on here. So I can go back to that user and and point to the path where that data is located and determine if that's business value data or not. There's also a click-through feature in our product here. As you see, there's a hyperlink for this file. So if I was to click on that, it would open that video file in its native application that you have set as a default on your local PC. So you could actually play that audio or video file, or if it was let's say a Word file out there from a file share, you could actually open that file by clicking on this and using the click-through feature to get a native view in its native application. To clear out of the screen here, I'm going to go back to show you our other searchability now through query. So I have a saved query looking for PII information. So again, like I said, you could save queries and use our query code to get some complicated searches built and save those and rerun those as needed. So I'm going to go to my drop down here. There's a whole host of saved queries. I have one here for PII, pattern search recognition. I'm going to load that query. It's going to show up here in my current query tab, and this is using our pattern recognition abilities. So we have for identifying PII information, if you have that full index created, so not a metadata level, but a metadata plus full text content index, you can search for the pattern of a Visa credit card, MasterCard, American Express, or Discover card. And we have that algorithm that matches those numbers and that sequence of numbers to search for there. And there's also a second option is to searching pattern recognition for Social Security card numbers as well. So you could add that other pattern recognition in there, and then I could hit the search. And what that would do is it would go out and find anything that meets that the pre-saved algorithm for those types of data sets. And if there was a full text index built, underneath the metadata view of an object here, it would show me the full text for that object. So it would be every single word that was available for that particular document, and anything that matched our algorithm, our pattern recognition algorithm, would be highlighted in yellow so you can quickly find where that credit card number is or that Social Security data is. And then you'd be able to go to our reports, find out who owns that data, what the host of it is, an exact file path and file name information, so you could go out and quarantine that PII information. The last use case scenario I'm going to show you here is showing some deduplication reports that we have. So for this example, I have a sample set of demo data here that I know has duplicate files in it. I'm going to select that file share, run my search, and I'm going to go over to our settings. And instead of looking at the unique files, let's say I want to look at duplicate reports. So I ran a blank search, let's say, on a particular file share or group of servers. I want to see what my duplicates look like in that environment. It's as simple as going to our Settings tab, selecting the duplicate setting under Duplication Options, running my search on that set of file shares or servers. Now I'm showing here an owner report. So I can see these are all duplicate files. So for each owner here, this one owner has 251. The other has 11 duplicate files out there. I can go look at duplicates by file extension. So the biggest number of duplicates I have on my environment are Word documents. The second number of largest files duplicated across my environment are PDF files. I can go look at host to see what host in my environment has the biggest set of duplicates. For this particular data set, all of the duplicate data resided on one host. And as you see, all of these reports have that duplicate name in front of it, so you can differentiate from a regular report looking at unique values. So I can switch back here to unique, rerun my search, and now it's just going to show me unique files by host. So all those reports are also downloadable to CSV, or you could PDF them off the interface here if you want the graphical representations with them. So that's all for my use case scenario demo. I'm going to pass this back over to Jim again.
Hey, thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. Okay, so to wrap this up, okay, a couple more slides. So I think, some of the sample workflows, Greg went through some great examples that we're seeing out there is a lot of aged data cleanup, stuff that's just aged out of any business value. And, some companies are looking at stuff that has been accessed in 3 years, others in 5 years, others in 7 years. You have that flexibility. But understanding what it is and profiling a server, and if you've got, a 10 terabyte server or 50 terabyte server, upgrading that stuff is pretty expensive. So why not take a look at it and do some spring cleaning here and figuring out, a large portion of it has lost value. So cleaning up stuff based on the age, or even just working with the appropriate folks to let them know that their data hasn't been accessed in a significant amount of time. We also see clients doing some data tiering, some with lower cost storage environments like even cloud storage, to finding stuff like that that is really questionable. Has it become outdated and trivial content that could be moved out to less expensive storage and just sit out there for a couple of years before it gets purged. Managing large multimedia files, PI audits, email management. We're also seeing things like storage, capacity allocations, and chargebacks. So, the HR department is taking up this capacity and so on. Some of the data that's out there, there's some interesting reports showing that, if data exists on user shares, a good, in terms of stuff that needs legal hold or records retention is really, typically around 6% of what exists out there. Stuff that's current that has business value, 25%, and stuff that can be defensively deleted is about 70%. Not that you're going to delete all that stuff, but just knowing that stuff that's outlived its business value could be a large chunk of what exists on your servers. So advantages to data profiling are great. It's really better insight. It's the knowledge that you need in order to manage this content. Streamline your storage capacity, clean up stuff that's just aged out of any value whatsoever. We do have clients that are doing data profiling on legacy tapes and managing to remediate a large portion of it because based on the profile, they're finding that stuff has no value. Improve support for legal and compliance, develop policies. So there's, it's really kind of a, multifaceted tool to be able to not only handle disposition and content, but also help support policies and compliance efforts as well. So, where's the return on investment here? And I think a lot of clients look at this as saying, you know what, it's cheap to buy storage. And, I think, storage is not as cheap as you think. You all know that. But, if you look at, what you're paying to expand your storage and upgrade capacity is just the beginning of the tip of the iceberg. What's it cost to, manage that data and back up that content for disaster recovery? What are legal and compliance requests against that data and the liability of that content? What about sensitive data management? You have sensitive data sitting on those servers. Manage it properly, find it encrypted, it can be very expensive. What are your archiving strategies? Are you archiving everything, or are you only archiving value-added information of value? What about data breaches? We have customers that are facing, data breaches by not managing data effectively. Is there sensitive data sitting on those user shares that could be, if it breaches your firewall, is it something that's going to get you on the front page of the newspaper in not so good way? Security policies, policy audits, mergers and acquisitions, data center consolidation, another key one. If you're consolidating your data center or merging with or acquiring other companies as you bring those servers together, are you really kind of managing and migrating data that has no value? How do you know that? So, how to streamline that process. Pricing, some of the pricing scenarios that we have simple proof of concept, and again, we encourage our customers to start small. Start with, select servers, user shares with mystery data. This could be 10 terabytes of data, 50 terabytes of data. Pricing is very affordable. It starts, at $1,000 per terabyte for metadata indexing. Right now, we require a hardware platform of about $13K. We're going to have a software-only version or a VMware version coming soon that will eliminate that cost. But even with that cost in there, it's very affordable to get going. So, we have customers that start anywhere, 20, 30, 50K deployments of the technology, and the payback is pretty immediate. We also have a cloud lab where you can send stuff. You're obviously not going to send your servers to our lab, but you can send a recent backup of the servers. Since we can process backup tapes, you can send recent backup of a number of servers. We can do a data profile on that stuff and kick back a report to you. So this profile report will be generated. You can send us 20 tapes, 20 LTO3 tapes, for example, $150 a tape. We're going to kick you back a report that will allow you to have something to speak about and understand the profile of that content. So low cost, easy ways to get started. So I'm being told we're at our time limit, that we got to wrap it up. There is a white paper that's available that talks about how to manage a reclaimed storage capacity. If you want to send an email out, or if you have specific questions, since we didn't have time today to get to questions, we ran a little bit long. Our contact information there, my email address is on the screen. Shoot an email to us and we'll get you an answer as soon as possible. If you're interested in any of those proof of concepts I mentioned or this white paper, ask for that, or even the slide deck. We can get that to you immediately. So thank you all for your time today, and we look forward to speaking with you.